you love ball like I do, After Dark's a must listen.
It's where I go to get my hoops fix.
This is Field of 68 After Dark.
Hello and welcome in to a Thursday, January 16th edition of Field of 68 After Dark. I'm John Martin. I'm joined tonight by my guys, Jerel McNeal and Mike LaTulip. And I don't know about you guys, but I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, which means that Sesame Street is on a lot. And you know how Sesame Street will have like the word of the day and the number of the day. And we got a theme of the day here on the show. And it's easy to understand, even for our young ones in the audience. It's winning on the road in college basketball is really damn hard. We had a light night and a light card in college basketball tonight, but that was certainly one of the things that was on display and continues to be on display as we speak, with Maryland and Northwestern coming to a final here really soon. Michigan goes down at Minnesota. Memphis goes down at Temple. So we'll get into all that here on the show a little bit later. We'll buy, sell, and hold. Get into some of the best wins of the week, some of the worst losses of the week. So a lot to get into today here on the show. But let's get started, folks. Michigan, number 20 in the country, on the road. I think, 10-point favorite against this Minnesota team that's been scrapping, that's been trying to find a way, but has just not found a lot of traction. Dawson Garcia throws up a prayer at the end of regulation, tied 81, and it is answered. They deserve it. They deserve it after everything they've been through this season. But from Michigan's standpoint, actually, let me just back up. We'll get to Michigan in a minute. Real quick, some love for Minnesota. They got the win, Mike. How big was this for their program, and just trying to kind of salvage something here, as they're getting into Big Ten play?
It's huge. It's huge because, they flashed the graphic. Ben Johnson hadn't won a top 25 game in his career there at Minnesota. They hadn't won one, I think, since 2021. And these type of wins, and I'm sitting there watching it, and I don't want to bring Indiana into it this soon, but there's just a difference between a team like that is 0-6 in conference, 8-9 overall, that still play their asses off. I've never questioned that about Minnesota, ever. And I've never questioned whether or not Ben Johnson cares. It's just a matter of talent on that team. And tonight, you could tell. They've been knocking on the door. This was their third overtime game this season, and Dawson Garcia was a story. Obviously he hit the big shot, but Michigan's inability to contain Dawson Garcia off the dribble really eventually did them in. I know he hit the 40-footer to win it, but his ability to get downhill off the bounce. You look at the 15 offensive rebounds for Minnesota. Not only does that show effort, but just the persistence to get downhill and to put Michigan in rotation. And when I say rotation, you get a tough matchup like Dawson Garcia up top. He's going against Danny Wolf. Now you got a guy, like Frank Mitchell who gets 6 offensive rebounds. Why is he getting those offensive rebounds? Because when Wolf gets beat off the bounce, Vlad Golden's got to go over to try to block and contest and rotate. Who's that leave under the basket for offensive rebounds? Frank Mitchell. So that was, to me, the story of the game. But it all starts with Dawson Garcia, and I'm thrilled for him because he's a guy that could have probably chased a bag elsewhere, hasn't won the last few years at Minnesota, could have gone somewhere else, sticks with it, and gets a massive, massive moment that he's going to remember forever there in the barn.
Jerel, this Minnesota team, really unfortunate loss to Ohio State in overtime a couple of weeks back. Lose a tight one to Maryland, and you finally get the result. Is this? I know you weren't in many situations like this where you were under 500 in January and you needed a prayer, but they got one. And I would just ask, how powerful do you think that could be for them?
Yeah, and you're right. I was fortunate enough to not be in that situation a lot, John. But at least in college, I still had. We all run into those dog days as pros if you're fortunate enough to go on and play after college. But man, it's been tough sledding for Minnesota. It's a huge win, obviously. More than anything, just just to bring some excitement and some joy back to that locker room. It's really tough to lose games the way that they've been losing games. Like if anybody got a chance to watch the way that they lost that game against Ohio State a few weeks back, uh, you couldn't help but feel a little good for Minnesota tonight, man. And it's also a credit to Coach Johnson, man. That's clearly a team that's been scrapping and fighting the entire way. Sort of like Mike said, it's real easy when things aren't going well at this time of the year. You start off, you can't buy a win in conference play either. So you kind of digging yourself even bigger hole, and things usually go one or two ways. Where the locker room completely quits on you, and everybody's thinking about just the off season and getting the hell out of there and getting this thing over with. Or you could lock down and scrap, man, and fight for the guy that's next to you. And I think you saw a lot of that tonight. They had me a little bit worried, man, because I thought it was going left when I seen the one kid throw the ball off the back of the structure of the rim. So I was like, man, this is gonna be tough if they lose another game like this. So man, I'm not gonna lie, I was happy to see him win. Obviously for Dawson Garcia, a guy who's kind of been there through it all and seen a ton of being on the wrong side of this thing. For him to be the guy to hit that shot tonight, a logo three, a step inside half court. Just a great atmosphere. The fans were excited. They got a little mini court storm there as well too, and I think it also just speaks, obviously to the depth of the conference of the Big Ten too, man. It's just it's hard winning on the road, man. But it's a lot of good teams in that conference, even the ones that aren't doing well.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of the theme of the night, right, that we're about to get into here. I mean, Michigan, last week and a half ago, goes to UCLA, and we've learned some things about UCLA in time since then. But in that moment, I mean, that was a hell of a win. You pack them up by 20 at their place, and then, of course, you come back and you drop this one. Mike, I always am very careful, even if it's good teams, right? Like, I'm always very careful not to overweigh road losses, right? Like, I mean, it's just incredibly difficult, to do that consistently. So when you're thinking about this performance from Michigan, especially against an underperforming Minnesota team, where do you come down on tonight for the Wolverines?
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota's not an easy place to play. I mean, anybody that's been in that arena, the court's elevated. They have by far the smallest locker room in the Big Ten. I mean, it just runs probably 7 feet wide, maybe, and it just goes straight back. And there's just lockers to the side. You're packed like sardines in there. You have to walk up this little staircase to get to the floor, and so it's an unorthodox place to play to begin with. But for Michigan, they've been playing with fire all season, and they've had these double-digit leads. They had double-digit lead against Arkansas, squandered the Oklahoma game after having a double-digit lead. USC, they had a double-digit lead and let them back into it. They eventually pushed it back open. Same thing with UCLA. You get up big early. UCLA, I think, takes a 4-point lead, 3-point lead in the second half, and then you flip it the other way and run them out of the gym again. Michigan has these elite stretches. They build these leads because they have elite stretches on both ends where they're really guarding, where Danny Wolf finds this zone. They start really getting into a rhythm with that big-on-big ball screen. Trey Donaldson gets going. Namari Burnett's been one of the most efficient players in America this year. I mean, they can get you from a lot of different angles. Early tonight, it was Will Cheddar, who comes back to his home state, a guy that was like a 25-point-per-game guy in high school who's accepted his role. They got a lot of really good players, and I'm not out on them at all because they lost a road game. These games happen, not only in the Big Ten, they happen across America. We've seen it just this week as well. So the thing with them is they're still going to have several advantages every time they step on the floor, mainly because of that front court. I talked about the elite stretches that they have. It's just going to come down to how they value the basketball. And tonight they got burned. I mean, they had 13 turnovers tonight. Some of them felt like they were in somewhat big moments down the stretch there. Got to get that rectified, and then you just can't concede possessions like that. And then when you have a guy like a Dawson Garcia, who's a really, really tough matchup, a 4 or a 5 that can take you off the bounce, how do you fare if you're Danny Wolf? How do you fare if you're Vlad Golden? Because tonight it was an issue. And does that persist moving forward? Those are things that got to get rectified. But it's one loss here in January, and I still think with their loss, with Illinois' loss to USC, that conference is still up for grabs, and Michigan's still in that race.
So Jerel, knowing the highs that Michigan has shown, and certainly some lows here, where do they fit in for you in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I'm right on par with Mike with this one. This isn't a concerning loss. Obviously, it's a game that they would have loved to had and kind of continue to set them out in front of the pack or leading the pack in the Big Ten. But like you said, the theme of the show is it's hard to win on the road. But you got to give those guys credit. They built up a lead. Theoretically, they controlled the majority of the game. Michigan was in full control. Eventually, Minnesota made a run at it and kind of got the crowd back involved in the game in the second half. And they kind of, it was a nip and tuck game from that point forward. But there were a couple times where Minnesota kind of had them on the ropes toward the end, and Michigan just came up with an answer every single time. I think they have one of the most unique dynamics on offense, just with that front court, like you guys talked about, but just the things that Wolf is able to do. And really, he's sort of like the trigger man. He's the point man for them. Working out of that 4 or 5 ball screen to even throwing the small guards in there and doing the double drag action where he's able to, kind of get to those elbows or mid post spots on the floor. And make passes to get other guys easy looks, specifically Golden. They have a great connection with that, kind of like that high-low pass straight on once he gets it around the top of the key, hitting him there. And he also has the ability to handle the ball and go to work from there. But like Mike said, tonight was a really tough matchup. And let's not be mistaken. Dawson Garcia is one of the best players in the league. He's a matchup problem. Specifically for those two guys, I worry a bit about them defensively because I think those guys do struggle to keep the ball in front, and they will struggle just as far as a foot speed aspect. If they run into guys like that, kind of those hybrid players that can put the ball on the deck a little bit and do some things off of the dribble from the perimeter or guarding ball screens, whatever it may be. And those guys are way too important on the offensive end. Is my main concern for those guys to be, kind of like defensive liability. So, but for the most part, Michigan's going to be around. They'll be right and running for things right now, as far as I can tell. And I think they're one of the best teams in the Big Ten for sure.
Yeah, sticking with that, around college basketball, Maryland Northwestern, by the way. Did you have a point there, Mike? I didn't know if you...
Yeah, I just want to hit on one more thing with Michigan because Jerel – made me think about just an additional point with the defense as well. There's a couple points, right? Like Vlad Golden was 4 for 13 around the rim tonight. That can't happen. He missed a couple dunks, missed a couple bunnies. But late in the game, I just thought this was interesting, right? Like Minnesota busts a switch at the top of the key at the end of regulation when Wolf hits the 3 to take the lead. And then their final defensive possession, when Dawson Garcia gets fouled, Roddy Gale was guarding him. And they took Golden out of the game, and they had Wolf in there, but they didn't want to put Wolf on him. So I thought, and Dawson Garcia just drove straight at Roddy Gale and put Roddy Gale in jail, and he fouled him. Like I'm interested late game how they manage their personnel given those matchups. That was just another point I wanted to add.
Yeah, Maryland Northwestern tied in overtime right now, 72 apiece. So as soon as that goes final, we'll get into that. But in the meantime, in between time, again, a case of another top 20 team going on the road in college basketball against a team that maybe is underperforming a little bit. Memphis loses to Temple 88-81. Jamal Mashburn has 21 on a 4 of 16 shooting night. Perhaps the most, I think, disturbing stat of the night, fellas, was out-rebounded 49-25. Temple had almost as many offensive rebounds as Memphis had total rebounds. So, Jerel, I'll just start with you. Memphis fans have this PTSD that after beating Ole Miss, after beating Clemson, after beating Michigan State, that this year won't be like last year, that this year they won't get into conference play and watch their season's bottom fall out like they did last year. But then you barely get by ECU, barely get by North Texas, then you drop one on the road to Temple. So is there reason for concern or the same thing we were talking about with Michigan?
I think this is a different team from the team last year. Obviously, this is a concerning thing just because it's kind of become a theme for the Memphis teams over the last couple of years. But I don't think the bottom is gonna fall completely out of this one. And to be honest with you, it would be a really long fall just with the amount of quality wins that they got this year already early on in the year. But this to me just stunk of a team uh, that seems to almost get bored a little bit at times, depending on the competition and who they're playing and what kind of stage or platform it's on. Obviously, Temple's a good team, man, but those guys just did not look like they were ready to go right from the tip tonight. Give them credit because I felt like they did everything that they possibly could throughout the course of the game to kind of engineer that energy, even though it may not have been genuine the entire time, but they started to pick up full court there, and they actually got the game back within a possession game at one point, I believe, down the stretch there. But they weren't able to make enough plays. Their defense wasn't great tonight, and I think you hit it on the head. Just Memphis can't go on the road and get out rebounded by that margin. Uh, to Temple. It can't happen. It's a recipe for disaster. I don't give a damn who you are, who you playing. You're not gonna have a good result when you get out rebounded by that much. And the craziest thing I thought, even just speaking of that, because that's one of the things that I circled in my notes, John. But Temple had a 6'4" guard come off of the bench and get
Yep.
12 rebounds by himself.
Yep. Yep.
A 6'4" guard that came off the bench and get 12 rebounds by himself. And it was a 50-50 ball. It was an effort thing tonight, to be honest with you. And that's the only excuse for them getting beat up that bad on the glass. But at the same time, I didn't think they were going to go undefeated throughout the conference
Right.
play. But I still think that they kind of got to stack these wins, and they do need. This is a team where they're good enough, man, to make a run. But they need to roll through this conference somewhat. And I'm not saying it's not going to come without some slip ups. Obviously, like we said, it's hard to win on the road at times, regardless of the league. But man, they need to roll for them to get a decent and favorable seed late in March, man. So I think they kind of need to shore things up. And those guys have just got to be locked in and laser focused going into every game and find a way to recreate the energy, regardless of who the opponent is.
Mike, I would just come at it, when you have Musa Cisse and you have Dane Danger and you have the talent that Memphis has, like, is it a skill issue when you get out rebounded like that? Is it a scheme issue? I mean, like, you tell me, how do you fix that?
I'll answer that point just within the broader point that I'm going to make, because Jerel mentioned the word board, and this is a really great lesson for this particular group, this particular Memphis group to learn. Because when you build a resume like they have, and when you've established yourself as a good team, because I think Memphis is a good team, right? They've established that to this point. Things get harder. They don't get easier when that happens. And so you're not sneaking up on anyone at this point. And when someone says, hey, you're going to get everybody's best shot, right? That's the saying, right? When you're the team that everybody's gunning for in the conference, everybody says you're going to get everybody's best shot. Why do they say that? They say that because the Temples, the Charlottes, the Wichita States, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, likely won't dance. Barring some run
Absolutely
in the
not.
conference tournament, likely won't dance. Okay, so what happens is, for those teams, the memories are created in conference. They're not created postseason most times for those teams. If you're Memphis, you're thinking ahead. What seed are we going to get? Can we make a run in March? All the Memphis fans, I'm sure you are too, right? Can we make a Sweet 16? Can we get off that 8-9 line? For the Temples and teams like that, these are their memories, is knocking you off. And so in the position Memphis is in right now, throughout a conference season, when you're the top dog, it is way more mental than it is physical. Like, this team has the physical gifts. They have the skill, right? They have the size. They have that every single night that they show up. And so, do you still play to your standard when you're the superior opponent? Because that's to me, that's why I love college basketball. Because the great teams, like, why are great teams great? And it's usually not just because, hey, man, they got better players. Or, hey, man, they got, this size or they got this skill. Like, great teams separate themselves from good teams because every single night you're just a freight train. And that freight train is on the tracks, and it doesn't matter who is in front of you. You play to your standard and you keep rolling through conference. Right? You obviously have personnel, know your personnel, know the scout, all that stuff. That changes from game to game. But your standards and who you are does not change. And what I noticed from Memphis tonight was like, yeah, man, we're in Philly on a Thursday night. It's Temple. That's what it looked like early. And that's why and you know what ends up happening? They start banking in threes at the end of the shot clock. They start tracking down rebounds, offensive rebounds, 22 of them.
Yep.
Yeah, 22 of them. I mean, Mashburn went 4 for 16 from the field. And it didn't matter because they got in so many different areas. So, with a lot of transfers, with a lot of new guys, who rallies this group? Right? That's the question with Memphis. And when I say rallies this group, yes, of course, Penny has responsibility in that. But any good team, and Jerel, you know this, you've been a part of these teams, within the players' locker room, you have to have guys that are like, Thursday night in Philly, hell no. This is not a letdown. This period. That has to start with the players. Like, because that is your main source of accountability. I mean, you have it obviously at the top, but players have to hold each other accountable. And I'm passionate about this because I think Memphis is a really good team. We've seen flashes of a true top 15 team, a true, maybe 4 or 5 seed in the NCAA tournament, given their resume. So that's just, it's how do they manage the mental game of conference? We saw FAU last year, didn't handle it well. Memphis, you got a shot here to make some history, and what are you going to do with it? That's my question. So probably way too long of a tangent, but
no, I appreciate that, and I'll be honest. It made like these kinds of losses. He's long gone now. He's in a different world, in a different league now, and I miss him every day. But it makes me appreciate Kelvin Sampson so much more. Because when he was in the same league, right, with Memphis and with a better league, like Jerel, Kelvin found a way to do it every single week. I don't know how he did it, but he did. You look up and he'd be 15-3, 17-1.
Yep, he dominated in this a big reason why those teams had the opportunity to get those higher seeds. They obviously did their work in a non-conference, man. But when you're in the league like that, and like we talked about, oh wow, Northwestern just did something crazy. When you're in the league like that, you get opportunity. You don't get as many opportunities to get quality wins, but you are a quality win for everybody, or you're the Super Bowl for a lot of these teams, as we talked to, because a ton of these teams already kind of know they're not going dancing. So you're gonna get everybody's best shot. What can you do? And it's a challenge. It's a challenge, especially with good teams and talented teams, to keep guys on course and keep them focused. But I think you spoke to it perfectly, Mike. It starts in the locker room. It's a little bit of coaches speak, but man, those are the best teams, the ones that police themselves. And to be honest with you, the coaches don't have to say a whole lot about guys being locked in, engaged, ready to go, and knowing what every moment can mean. Because we understand that it's a road game. It's a Thursday night in Philly, but at the same time, it's an opportunity for y'all to continue to get a little bit more separation for everybody else in that league, and just continue to put little notches on your resume belt as you continue to move toward the postseason and get ready for the tournament. And at the end of the day, what it's also going to do at the end of the season, at the end of the year, and even in conference tournament time, is take some of the pressure off of you guys and make some of those games not as meaningful as they're probably going to end up being if you continue to drop these games on the road.
Yeah, and then you mentioned it, man. Northwestern did something crazy. As we were talking about Memphis.
Yeah, it's crazy. I couldn't help myself.
They get a buzzer beater there in overtime off of a busted play, man. Nick Martinelli makes the jumper with no time remaining. 76-74 over Maryland is the final. Mike, we were talking about this game before, earlier this morning, and we were circling it because obviously it's a light night of college basketball. And you kind of mentioned, like, this is the season on the line in many ways for Northwestern, and they dug deep and they found a way to get the win against a Maryland team that probably is not as good as their record indicates. We'll save that for a later discussion, but just the importance of this win, man, for Northwestern getting it done.
Much needed. Much needed. I mean, we talked about it before we went on. Northwestern's been the most unlucky team in college basketball this year. You got the waved off 4-point play that should have happened for Brooks Bonnerheiser against Butler, lose that game. You got the play against Penn State that ends up being a goaltend that they end up not calling a goaltend, lose that game, and then you're up by 2 with 0.8 left at Iowa, and Josh Dix hits a 3 to win it. I mean, this is a team that right now could be 14-3, but instead they're, whether they're 11-6. So I said before the season, Northwestern, I thought it was crazy they were picked 16th. And I know that the Big Ten is super deep and has a lot of good teams. I thought it was crazy they were picked 16th because that's a team that's finished top 3 2 out of the last 3 years. I know they lost Boo Buie. Purdue lost Zach Edey. And I know you could say Braden Smith, but Brooks Barnheiser's been a first team, second team all-league type of guy and has done stuff in this league that hasn't been done since Draymond Green in terms of the production that he's put out. So they needed this tonight, man. Martinelli and Barnheiser was fitting that Barnheiser was the one that made the bucket there to make it 74-72. Maryland ties it up, and who finishes it? Martinelli. I mean, those are 2 complete matchup nightmares in the conference. And Barnheiser was hurt all preseason. Finally feels like he's got his legs underneath him. Martinelli's just been probably one of the better stories in college basketball with how he's come on this year and being a 20-point per game guy that, I think last year, had 1 game over 20 points and it was ironically at Maryland. Or coincidentally at Maryland. So huge, man. I mean, this is what you would hope for Northwestern. And if you're a Northwestern fan, this is an inflection point where you say, all right, this is one we know we needed. We went out, we fought, wasn't perfect, went into overtime. Maryland gets the first bucket in overtime, which is usually a good omen for that team. And Northwestern keeps fighting, doing what they do, get stops, and lean on their 2 horses in Martinelli and Barnheiser. It's a big time win for Northwestern.
For Maryland, Jerel, this team annoyed me. I'm not gonna lie to you. They just kind of felt like that bullshit team that fattened up on everybody in the 300s in November and early December, and then once the rubber hit the road, which it did, the mask kind of came off. I'm not saying they're a bad team, but they over at KenPom, I think they were 11. Coming into the new year. They were 11th at KenPom, and that ain't the number 11 team in America. So what are they? Where do the Terrapins stack up?
I mean, that's actually a really good question, to be honest with you, and I think time will tell, be the ultimate teller, but I think they're a team that's right now, they're in the middle of the pack. Obviously, this would have went a long way tonight. I think would have got them a game over 500 for league play, and obviously a game where they probably needed to win to get a decent road win in the Big Ten. But they're a team right now who's kind of constructed. I like the way that they're built on the interior. They don't have a ton of guys on the perimeter that can really shoot the ball. I feel like that's still one of their drawbacks is them being able to stretch the floor and shoot the ball. But Queen is great inside. Obviously, Reese is really good inside. They beat you up on the glass. They're physical. They guard. But they gotta find a way here at some point, John, just to try to get some quality wins, as you spoke to. For the most part, their resume isn't overly impressive, and they're gonna need to take advantage of some of these opportunities. But they'll have plenty of them, obviously, in the Big Ten. But they're gonna have to put some pieces together to try to get a couple good wins if they want to make sure that they're gonna be on the right side of the bubble when it comes time for March.
Absolutely. But again, 76-74, really nice win there for Northwestern against Maryland, one they had to have to keep their hopes alive for the tournament. We're going to come back. These guys are going to pick their best wins of the week, hand out worst losses of the week as well. We'll do that when we get back. You're watching Field of 68 After Dark.
If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM for the season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Go download the BetMGM app and use the code FIELD today.
Welcome back, Field of 68 After Dark here on a Thursday. I'm John Martin, joined tonight by my guy, Jerel McNeal, on, again, not the busiest Thursday night, but we've had some important, significant outcomes, still the same. And listen, in our next exercise, we're going to hand out the best wins of the week. And there are some candidates tonight, I would even say, maybe that enter that discussion, even on a lighter card. So, Mike, get us going, man. Who's your best win of the week this week in college basketball? You're muted, my guy. You got to turn your mic on. I know you're saying good stuff.
First,
you got us. There we go.
What team do you think I said? The Ole Miss Rebels. The Ole Miss Rebels. That's my that's the win of the week for me. I think Malik Dia was outstanding in that game. Just a matchup nightmare. Alabama had just a number of combinations they tried to throw at him defensively. Clifford Murray obviously is dealing with some injuries, but whether it was Nelson, Stevenson, Diabate, it didn't matter. I mean, he was getting it in a number of different ways. 23 points, 19 boards, and credit to their guards too, man. I mean, Barnes, Murray, Padula, those guys being able to turn the corner, get downhill, occupy that ball screen defender. Malik Diaz able to slip behind, get easy baskets, put backs. I mean, he was terrific. And Ole Miss stopped one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country from getting offensive rebounds because they didn't let him finish possessions with shots on rim. I mean, just for context for people listening, Alabama took 47 shots in that game. Alabama took 55 threes against South Dakota State. If that gives you any indication how much Ole Miss limited them by creating havoc, by turning them over. And if you're Ole Miss, man, you got America's attention. You got America's attention. Because last year, 13-0, great start to the year. You hit the new year, you get absolutely roundhoused by Tennessee. You get run out of the gym in Knoxville. And then you lose 3 of 5, and then you lose 8 of 10 to finish SEC play. And people forget about you. And then you have another great start this year, albeit another kind of light non-conference. So, you need to put in some work to get people's attention, and winning 4 straight SEC games to start the new year. That's getting people's attention. So got to be happy if you're Chris Beard. I know he was on the show the other night on the bus, which was awesome. Got to be happy if you're him, this program, and the fans. But now, man, now you got a target. You're sitting towards the top of the SEC. You got a target now. So I'll be excited to see how they handle that.
Yeah, that was a huge win. No, and I think even mathematically, that's probably going to stand up. Jerel, who's your best one of the week?
Yeah, mine is probably for sure not the biggest surprise or shocking win, but I went with Iowa State over Kansas. Just really impressive, and I was on last week and I spoke to it a little bit, man, but it just kind of further proved my point that my eyes weren't deceiving me. I think Iowa State is right up there when we talk about one of the top teams in the country, man. They're really damn good, and they can win in a multitude of ways. They don't really have a ton of weaknesses. They guard well, and they really put the clamps on Kansas in this game. Held Kansas to 40% shooting for the game, 31, I think, from the three. Dickinson went 3 for 10 from the field, only finished with 6 points, and he's obviously one of the most dominant and best players in college basketball. And to be honest with you, and these are the two things that I think this year kind of set them apart, is that Curtis Jones coming off the bench is unfair in a lot of different ways, because I think he's probably one of the most explosive and dynamic guards in the country. Keyshawn Gilbert didn't have his best game, but he didn't press, he didn't force. He trusted his teammates, finished the game with 8 assists. But the other difference maker is the combo of the big guys, man, with Jefferson and Jackson. Those guys probably don't get nearly enough credit. They're both different in their own ways, and they're both really damn good players, super versatile, and they just make a ton of difference for a team that was already loaded and have a ton of talent on the perimeter. So Iowa State was my best one of the week.
Yeah, that was I know it was at home and in Hilton. Like it's very difficult to win there, but it was just like the way they just locked down in that second half was.
It's impressive.
You know, and it's just like with them, the only thing I don't even know if I had them in my Final Four preseason, so I mean I kind of expected them to be awesome, but the only possible weakness I guess I'd have is does it travel, and like I just think that team is so tough that how can it not, right? Like how can it not travel with that group? You know, so
yeah, for sure. We didn't talk about Momcilovic is even in playing. I think that's how you say his name.
Yeah.
You know, he's probably their best catch and shoot guy for the perimeter as well, too, man. So it's like they got a plethora of weapons, man, and a ton of different ways they could do it. And they scrappy, they're tough, they guard, they don't get rattled. They can come back and light you up and play in the 80s and 90s, and they can play in the 50s and 60s, a rugged, tough game and win either way. So I think they're damn good, man. It was an impressive win for sure.
I'm gonna go with America's team, man. The Rutgers Scarlet Knights just went final. And it is America's team, damn it. And the reason why, I think you guys will appreciate this. Like they remind me of like the way you used to build college teams in like 2012 when you would like get the 5-star freshman, you know what I'm saying? And you try that shit, and you'd see if it, you know, and like nobody does it anymore, right? Everybody's like 26 years old in the sport now. So I appreciate the nostalgia of it, you know, bringing in Dylan Harper, bringing in Ace Bailey. And listen, like as expected, it's been extremely choppy for them. They have had some disappointing results, but they've also played teams really tough, played A&M really tough, obviously played, and got the win tonight on the road at Nebraska as significant underdogs, and I believe prevented a program record. They had won 20 straight home games at Nebraska and Pinnacle Bank Arena, and Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper said, not tonight. It ain't happening. A bunch of kids came to your trap. They said, not tonight. And I think in the process, right, put themselves back in the conversation for, you know, the bubble. I don't know where this is going, fellas. I'm not going to sit here and like try to proclaim that, you know, Rutgers is going to the tournament or something like that, but the talent is there, man. They can, you know, string a couple of these together.
Hey John, I'm gonna double down with you. And I was thinking about this other day. As much as we talk about just things that are good for the sport, can we just wipe the record out and just get those dudes in the tournament against somebody? Like regardless of record, can we all just be honest and say like they're fun to watch? That's a fun team to watch, man, because of the talent. We know they're young as hell. They make a lot of mistakes, obviously, and you know they're gonna have a tough year being in a conference like the Big Ten, like to be honest with you. But just on a pure talent standpoint, man, they got hoopers. They're fast, they play fast, they're exciting. They got young guys who are actually young guys. It's not 24 and 25-year-olds. These dudes are 17, 8. Like I was just playing like Harper sent us home in Peach Jam the year before. So it's like, man, like it's fun to watch. I think that's something that the fans gravitate toward too, man. So like if there was one team that I could pick, I was like, I know they probably not gonna make the tournament, but man, I would just love to have them in the field just to watch because it'd be fun to watch and they would probably win a game or two.
Yep. I mean the talent is crazy.
You know what's unique? You know what's unique too, real quick on Rutgers is, and I talked about this the other night, but Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey have a real chance to play major metric spoiler for Big Ten teams down the stretch. Like, I mean, think about those two dudes on the floor, and Rutgers probably will be likely out of contention for the NCAA tournament. I mean, I'm with Jerel. I hope they're not. I hope they figure it out and turn around. But that team playing spoiler, when you have, you know, other teams, it's usually like, you know, inferior talent and stuff. Those guys are going to be going on the floor against really good teams in the Big Ten and arguably have the two best players on the floor, most talented players. That's a scary thought if you're some of these Big Ten teams that have Big Ten title hopes and down the stretch you've got Rutgers on your schedule.
Yeah,
You
I
don't want to
think
see
we
those
need.
two dudes with nothing to lose. You don't want to see
No.
them with nothing to lose. Man.
Hell no.
Come on.
Hell
So
no.
that's what I think we should start the movement. Who's gonna miss some random obscure team in Dayton? Let's just go ahead and start a Memorial Rutgers spot in Dayton. It's just theirs.
Fan vote.
They have it. There are exactly. Yeah,
let's
they're like
get
the
them
NBA.
in.
Yeah.
Fan vote. I like it.
And
They
we'll
wanna
save it for
expand the
Rutgers.
tournament anyway.
Yeah, they're going to Dayton, and that's it. They're going to have to win however many, right? They're going to have to go on that VCU type of run, but we're going to save them a spot in Dayton. It's just going to be wasted by somebody else. You know, you might as well get some NBA guys in there.
We saw Virginia last year. Virginia
Exactly.
didn't score for like an hour and a half of real time.
Nobody needs
terrible.
to see that.
It was terrible.
Yeah, man, good call out. Nobody needs to see that. So, and even Colorado State won the game and they scored 40 against Texas the next game. So, yeah, we can save a spot for Rutgers. I think just like a park bench. You know, this is for Rutgers.
Yeah.
All right, who had the worst loss of the week, Mike? It's a tough one.
Was it tough? Because to me, it's not even close. It was Indiana.
You're right. It's
Like-
not tough.
Hey, my redshirt season, I'm sitting there in Assembly Hall. I look up, Indiana put 103 on us, and it's Yogi Ferrell, it's Troy Williams, it's Thomas Bryant, OG Anunoby came off the bench. You know, and then other guys in that team, Nick Zeisloff, Max Bielfeldt, like they had talent for sure. But, you know, it's one thing to miss shots. It's one thing to get loose with the ball. It's a completely different thing to just have nights where you keel over and roll over and concede games. And that's what we saw. And I will say there's been a lot of national talk about that Indiana game, and I'm adding to it right now. But Illinois kicked their ass. Like, I want to make it clear that Illinois had something to do with that too. Breaking their spirit, kind of ripping their heart out of their chest. But that brand, man, it just doesn't have the same pop that it used to. And that's a shame because it's one of the better brands in college basketball. And so for the fans, that's who I feel for with Indiana, because some of the effort that's put on display in that game, just the lack of fire, the lack of care, that's disappointing. Because I'm a firm believer you can not live up to expectations, and you can be Indiana's not a below average team from a talent perspective. They're a below average team from a cohesion perspective. But you can still have fans show up to your games if you care and if you play hard. Because I witnessed it. I was in the Big Ten when Nebraska wasn't good. Pinnacle Bank Arena was still popping. I was in the Big Ten it was a couple years after, but when Wisconsin had their down year and one of Guard's first years when they won 15 games, people still showed up to the Wisconsin games because those guys still play hard. I mean, Minnesota wasn't packed tonight, but that place got loud because they give them something to cheer about. You play hard.
I think they
So,
stormed the
you know,
court.
that's-
All 45 of them.
Yeah, great. I love it. And so, for Indiana, man, like, it was the worst loss for me because I think it signified something bigger than just the loss. Like, we'll see what happens with Mike Woodson, who they go after, but man, they got a major uphill battle to salvage their season at this point, which is crazy because they were picked to win the Big Ten.
Is there a different answer than Indiana, Jerel?
And I'll just say this because I picked two just because I felt like this was the most obvious answer. I had Indiana too, obviously just an embarrassing loss, but my backup for that was Pitt at Florida State. I just feel like at one point in time we kind of maybe got a little ahead of ourselves. We were talking about Pitt being the second or third best team possibly in the ACC, so maybe we jumped the gun a little bit with that. Didn't look great, obviously, to a struggling Florida State team. And I'm not going to say struggling in terms of they, for the most part, had some wins against teams they should have won against, but really no quality wins. We'll see what the Panthers are able to take things from here.
Yeah, the answer is definitely Indiana. There's no question about it. That's humiliating. Hard to bounce back from that one, honestly. I'll watch and I'll see, but I don't know. Psychologically, man, that's gonna be tough to stomach, man. That's gonna be tough to stomach. for the rest of the year. No doubt about it. All right, when we come back, I don't know who came up with this diabolical exercise. I don't know who's responsible for this, but we're going to have to sell one of Auburn, Iowa State, and Duke. And Mike's going to go first. Mike's going to, because that's just the way this is going to go. That's you're going to sell one of those teams. We're going to send you out there first. We'll do that when we get back. Watch it go to 68 after dark.
Now that the college basketball season is in full swing, you need to make sure that you have access to the best betting tool on the market, the Rhythm app. Spelled RITHMN, is a data-backed app that uses AI and analytics to identify inefficiencies in betting lines and the player prop market that will allow you, the user, to profit. You can create customized, analytics-driven betting models tailored to your personal preferences as a bettor. Users have access to up-to-the-second against-the-spread data. And if you're like me and you understand pictures better than numbers on a screen, Rhythm's internal trend analysis provides you with the kind of graphs that will allow you to evaluate past results and project future performance in a visual way. Every Division I college basketball team is included in the Rhythm's metrics. Free subscribers to the Field of 68 Daily will get 25% off for a Rhythm subscription. Use the QR code on the screen to sign up or download at the link in the description.
Welcome back, Field of 68 After Dark here on a Thursday, January 16th edition of the show. I'm John Martin, joined tonight by Jerel McNeal, Mike LaTulip. Been a fun show here tonight, talking about Michigan going down, Memphis going down, Rutgers back on the right side of things maybe. We've carved out a spot for the Scarlet Knights. They deserve it, honestly. We'll see. We'll see if our campaign is successful at the end of the year. But now we're gonna do a little buy, hold, or sell. And I hope I'm gonna get this format correct here. I think everybody knows the gist of the game here. You buy a team, you hold a team, you sell a team. So let's get it cracking. You got to choose one. You can only choose one. Buy Auburn, Duke, Iowa State. Mike, we'll start with you.
I think there's just, before we start this, there's a quick caveat here, right? I'm thinking about this from like an investment standpoint, right? So all these three teams are at different prices in my mind. Okay, so I think Auburn and Duke are the most likely national championship matchup, but I'm buying Iowa State. Okay, so let's just talk about Iowa State for a second. All right, definite continuity coming back from last year, from a Sweet 16 team, but they hit it out of the park in the portal, man. I mean, you go on down the list, like Joshua Jefferson was 10 a game at St. Mary's. I mean, there are definitely other high major teams that probably wanted him. He fits this role perfectly. Chatfield's a guy that comes off the bench. He was 9-5 at Seattle. Right? How many high major teams were knocking down his door? But he fits a perfect role, being a physical guy, getting offensive rebounds, second chance opportunities. And then Heisey comes off the bench as well. Deshaun Jackson has really fortified that front court, I think, which I don't say wasn't a strength for them last year, but it's definitely better for them this year. And I'm watching that Kansas game, and Kansas is just playing whack-a-mole, right? Because the second you think you've solved something with Iowa State, there's another thing that pops up you got to solve. I mean, Iowa State's one of the top 2-point offenses in the country from an efficiency standpoint. They shoot 34% from 2 against Kansas, who did a great job, protecting the rim and forcing tough shots. And then you're like, okay, great. Iowa State just ended up shooting 61% from 3. And every time you drive, there's someone in the gaps. And I think, TJ and that staff deserve so much credit because they've coached their asses off this year. And they've had an answer for so many different things. I'll give one quick example here. Kansas is in drop coverage to start the game. All right, they're protecting, they want shots over the top. And the second they go to blitz a ball screen, literally the first time they go to blitz a ball screen, TJ's got an answer for it. We're flashing Joshua Jefferson up. Deshaun Jackson's going to roll to the basket. Now we're going to throw it straight to Jefferson. We got 2-on-1 against KJ Adams. Dump off to Deshaun Jackson. Dunk. Like that type of stuff. And they're just a smart team. Give me the team that plays tough. Give me the team that plays smart. And give me the team that come hell or high water can get 2 feet in the paint. That's why I'm buying Iowa State. But again, I'll make the caveat here with Auburn and Duke. I think, the most likely national championship matchup.
By the way, I'm being told you got to hold and you got to sell the remaining 2. So just get us there. Knock us out. Who are you holding? Who are you selling between Auburn and Duke?
I'll hold Duke and I'll sell Auburn. And the only reason I'm selling Auburn is because I think that price is very high, and you got an injury to your best player right now. So, I mean, I think that's it. In a way, I feel like it lets us off the hook that Janai Broome is hurt. But that's, I got to answer the question. So that's my buy, hold, sell.
All right, Jerel, buy, hold, sell, Iowa State, Auburn, Duke.
And I'll run this out, and it'll be a lot shorter because Mike kind of said a mouthful about my buy as well too, which is obviously Iowa State again. Like I said, I'm going all in on Iowa State, so we really don't need to rehash that. But I am gonna hold Auburn. I'm gonna hold Auburn obviously because we got a built-in excuse with the injury with Broome, but at the same time, Auburn is a team where I feel like when fully healthy and he's good to go. They're easily or right there where Iowa State is possibly one of the most complete teams in the country. Still been making some impressive performances without Broome. And they got depth, man. They got guys that can play. Miles Kelly, Baker Mazzara, Pettiford. They got guys that can go. So even just without Broome, I think that's a team I'm gonna hold, and then I'm gonna sell on Duke. And again, I'm gonna just kind of reiterate a point, and I'm gonna blame it on the youth. The Cooper Flag is amazing. Who's going to be that next guy? From night to night, it changes. Don't get me wrong. It's a credit to how good of a team they are, their depth. But damn, if they could get one of those older guys just to be like, yep, here we go. I'll be Robin to Batman. I'm going to consistently get you 15 points a night. I think it goes Flag, and then like the next guy, the drop off is like, the next guy's averaging like 12 points a game. And to be honest with you, I think some of the Duke fans got mad at me the last show because I said the same thing, but they were like, man, Proctor's having a career year. But I'm like, well, shit, you got to look in the scheme of things. It's a guy we were talking about was going to be a first-round pick a year and a half or 2 years ago. So it'd be a little bit more – I feel a little bit more comfortable if we can get up to around a 15-point per game range instead of 11 or 10 or 9 or something like that. So that's the only reason I'm selling. Obviously, we're nitpicking here because all three of these teams are more than capable of winning the national championship this year. So,
yeah, the bar is really high. Exactly. I agree with your order, though, just for the sake of discussion. I agree with buying Iowa State. I agree with holding Auburn. And I'm selling Duke because could Duke lose its National Player of the Year candidate and look as good as Auburn did against Mississippi State? The answer is no. They could not.
Way.
Their guard play is too iffy. Their guard play is too coin flippy. I just don't think they match up in terms of the guard play there. So I will sell Duke again.
All three of them have injuries. I mean, Malik Brown is a crucial part of that defense for Duke as well.
Point,
so
yeah, but again, we're talking about like the three best teams in college basketball. So I mean, the somebody has to go. I mean, that's the game, right? All right, next up, buy, hold, or sell. Mike, Michigan State, Purdue.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy Purdue. I just think they've made changes, putting in first into that starting lineup. I think it's helped them tremendously just from a balance standpoint. Braden Smith's been out of this world in Big Ten play. He's 16 a game, but almost 10 assists a game. He's been fantastic. And I think, the other thing that with Purdue is there's a lot of talk about, well, they need a fourth or fifth guy to step up. I mean, most college basketball teams don't have three guys, and they have three guys that they can count on consistently night in and night out. So that fourth, spot of production is just going to be a revolving door for Purdue. And I trust Matt Painter, so I'm buying them. I'm going to go ahead and hold Michigan. The upside, the talent, the skill level, the size, I'll hold them. And I'll sell Michigan State because obviously a 6-0 start. They've been great to start the season, but they haven't had a great win in almost like 2 months. So I'm selling them now while their price I think is pretty high.
All right, Jerel, what you got?
I'm going to buy Michigan. And obviously even with a loss tonight, Still some impressive moments. They've impressed me every time I watch them. I think they're a pretty unique team. Obviously, a ton of credit goes to Dusty May for kind of getting this thing rolling this quick or early on, which I'm not sure anybody thought he was going to be able to do. But they're looking good. They're going to be a team that's going to be around the top of the Big Ten. I'm actually gonna go really polar opposite of Mike here because I'm gonna hold Michigan State. Not completely sold on them. A pretty bad year last year, but they've for the most part been impressive. Even in losses this year is what I'll say. We all know kind of what their Achilles heel is. They're not a team that shoots the ball great, but I think this feels a little bit more like a traditional Izzo team, though. They're tough, they're physical, they guard. They got some freak athletes on that team and some tough, gritty guys, and they seem to all be all in for one another and playing together. So I'm kind of liking the vibe right now around Michigan State. So I'm a hold, and I'm gonna sell Purdue. To be honest with you, it's nothing more than I feel like it's just a team with a gaping hole with Zach Edey missing. Is not the same unit. Obviously, Braden Smith is spectacular, one of the best point guards in the country. Lawyer can shoot the hell out of the ball, but I feel like at times they just missing a little something on the athleticism size and a little bit inside on the interior with size, from what we're used to them having in the past. I would say that. But I'm not sure if they're going to be a team that's going to be able to kind of get over the hump and turn the corner for sure this year. Now, don't get me wrong. I still think they'll be up around the top of the Big Ten because Matt Painter is that good of a coach, and I think they have an identity for sure. They know how they want to play. But, every year in, year out, always necessarily have the talent to make a run. So I think that's going to be the thing this year with Purdue.
Yeah, I'm gonna Michigan State. I think Michigan State is like a Rorschach test, like to you, you may see a horse's ass, but I might see I might see Seabiscuit. You know what I mean? You may see a jackass, a donkey, a mule. I see Seabiscuit. I don't really know what to think about them, but they keep winning. And that's kind of where I stand with them. Obviously, I'm going to hold Michigan because I think their offensive potential is there, that they've showcased, many nights, the highs and lows. And then I'm going to sell Purdue. I have a lot of respect for Matt Painter. I just think when you lose the force that is Zach Edey, it's almost unquantifiable. He's done a good job of just kind of holding it together. You know what I mean? But I just don't know if I could buy him, as a team that can make a run. Let's get to the next group here. Oh man, we got to do this. Nobody wants these. Nobody wants these teams. Nobody wants these teams. It's like 3rd Street Flea Market. Indiana, Oklahoma, Dayton. Buy, hold, or sell, Mike.
I think you muted again, Mike.
Yeah, he don't want to buy nobody. He doesn't want to buy anybody. I don't blame him.
I'm running
I might
scared,
mute
man.
mine on this one too.
Yeah, I've been having a coughing attack. I'm just trying to not throw that into the mic. This is tough because I kind of lambasted Indiana. I'll break news here. I'm selling Indiana. I don't want to get that out right now. But about a month ago, I was on a show saying when Oklahoma was 13-0, I pretty much sold them at that moment because I just thought every single year you're going to have some team that's fooling you with a record like that. Last year was Ole Miss. Last year was Oklahoma too, who started the year I think 10-0 and then ended up finishing the season maybe 10-12. So I'll hold Oklahoma and I'll buy Dayton. I mean, it's been I don't know who that team is from the team that I watched in Maui, but I think Anthony Grant's a really good coach. I just still think in that league, they have the talent. They have really good players. I mean, since December 1st per Bart Torvik, I mean, they're 148th national. And that was a tournament team last year, an at-large tournament team last year. And with a lot of pieces that came back. I know Kobe Brea is obviously a big loss, but I just think right now they play so slow. So pick up the tempo, get more opportunities. and I don't know. I like them to turn it around. I for how bleak it's been, it's crazy to say that, but out of these three teams, because I have to choose one, Dayton's the one that I'm buying.
Jerel?
Yeah, this is really tough. I guess I'll it's gonna be hard to do, but I guess I'll buy Oklahoma. Although I'm pretty sure they probably gonna get throttled a good portion of the rest of the conference year. But I you gotta sell.
They got
Indiana
fears. They got
after-
fears, man. That's about the best.
Yeah,
I
they
can
got
say
fears. Yeah,
about
I'm
it.
about to say. Yeah, I mean, and to be honest with you, he keep him and what is it, Moore? I think Jelon Moore. They keep him around games. They play some guys tough, but even I guess their best win would be Michigan. And that was like a buzzer beater type game. Like, you know what I mean? Like they can keep it close. I don't feel like they have kind of the unit this year to get a ton of quality wins. But with this group, I got to buy them. I'll probably hold Dayton. Dayton looked a lot more dangerous and a lot better when they beat Marquette at one point this year. And then obviously we sell in Indiana. Like, you don't get, you get beat at at home by that much. You gotta sell them. You gotta sell them. Everybody's selling Indiana right now, so it is what it is.
Man. That's like this is
And,
like
like,
when I
I-
tell my wife. Go ahead,
Go
man.
ahead. No, I was just say quickly. Just another point on
Yeah, that's
Oklahoma.
what
I know I
what
said
I
I was.
tell.
I know. I said I was holding on Oklahoma. I mean, part of the reason for me is the front court, and they get beat up on the glass, man, on the defensive glass, and so that's just an SEC play out of all the conferences to not be good on the glass. That's not one I want to be bad on the glass in. Sorry,
Yeah,
Sean.
it's hard. It's hard. It's gonna be
No,
hard
no,
to win like
it's a
that
good
in the
point.
SEC.
But now this is just like when I have these conversations with my wife. Like, we're not buying anything anymore. It's over. Like, don't ask me if we're buying this. Don't ask me if we're buying that. The buying shit is over. All right? No spend January. That's what we're doing here on the show. We're doing no spend January. I don't buy none of these teams. These teams are ass. Dayton's falling off. If not for that UConn win in Maui, like, we wouldn't even really be talking about them. Oklahoma's completely come apart. Nobody cares in Bloomington anymore. No thanks. I mean, if I have to buy, I'll buy Fears because I like him as a player. The rest of it can go away. And then last one, Kansas, UCLA, and Louisville. I mean, there's some argument to be had here. Buy, sell, hold, Kansas, UCLA, Louisville. Mike, you're up.
Man, I'm gonna buy Louisville. I just give me the Pat Kelsey energy. Chucky Hepburn's been incredible. I mean, he's playing like a first team All ACC guy. He's been outstanding, and has really steered the ship for them as a guy that I question being like the lone point guard because he's always had a combo with him in the back, especially at Wisconsin. So it's been great to see them patch together with the injuries that they've had, and injuries to two guys that would really be starters for this team, and to still be where they're at in the ACC. I know the ACC isn't great by any means, but they're doing what compared to what they've been doing the past few years. It's a pretty awesome sight to see. And then I'll hold Kansas. I got a lot of question marks with Kansas, namely their personnel. That front court personnel is just, I don't want to say it's going to be the death of them, but Flory Badunga, I think, just deserves some more minutes, and just how he can run and jump, block shots. I mean, he makes him so much more athletic. He's a rim runner offensively. He had 4 blocks in like 11 minutes against Iowa State. His issue is he probably can't stay on the floor for 25 minutes because he's I think per 40 he's 7 fouls a game. But so I have questions about their personnel and whether or not they want to stay loyal to the guys they have in the front court, which I think they will, and then it probably will ultimately do them in. But I gotta sell UCLA after some of Cronin's comments, and not only the comments. Usually, coach makes a comment like that, and then it reinvigorates your team. This team did the opposite. I don't think they've won since he made the comments, and so that's why I'm selling on them. I'm really confused by the team they've put together, because none of those guys, like Mick Cronin. When I think about Mick Cronin, and not to bring up like PTSD for our own Kenny Freese, but I think of Yancey Gates, right? I think of Sean Kilpatrick. I think of like dudes like that are dogs that he's always had in his program, and nothing against like the guys that he has on that team, Those aren't Mick Cronin guys. And so that's why I think you have this massive disconnect for them, and that's why I'm selling.
Jerel?
Yep, I'm spot on with you. I really don't think it's another one. It's really no other way to put it right now. I guess you got to buy Louisville, even though with the injuries and everything, like what they've been able to do has been impressive, and you got to give Coach Kelsey a ton of credit. Mike kind of hit it on the head with Kansas. Again, another team that's loaded with a ton of talent. Not exactly sure how the pieces fit. Overall, they got a lot of money that's not producing right now. A lot of guys with big names and price tags, but aren't necessarily. It's not all coming together for them, and I'm not sure that's something that's going to be able to get figured out within the next month and a half. So I will hold Kansas because obviously they still have the talent if they ever do get it together and put it all together to make a run. And then UCLA, hit it on the head, like they pissing Mick Cronin off out there, man. They really pissing him off, and he's coming to press conferences. My favorite part about that rant was like the part when he stopped and goes, but they're nice kids. Like, that's the, like, he just, like, shit, ain't nobody got no energy. This dude sucks. They ain't doing this. They don't want to win. They delusional, but, I mean, they're nice kids. They're the good kids at the end of the day. So, whenever coach is that pissed off, you better believe that nobody's happy. The players, the assistants, the trainers, the student managers, everybody pissed off. So, like you said, that next game you don't come out and respond, your season kind of goes one of two ways. And right now they're trending down. So I'm selling UCLA.
Yeah, it's a wrap. I agree with the order. That you guys had. I wish we had more time, Mike, because I would really like to have a larger discussion about the guys you talked about, and when you think about Mick Cronin's prime and his heyday, which by the way, he's had some great years at UCLA, but like those kinds of players that you're talking about, like are they playing college basketball in 2025? You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know if those players are can you coach those guys in the same way in 2025? You know what I mean? So maybe Mick
you
is like
can't coach them if you're giving them $200K. You can't get a, what I'm saying? It's different deal. Like, what I'm saying? He kind of, it's a different level of power. And I'm just saying that because I ran into some of those teams when he was at Cincy with Big Yancey and those guys and Kilpatrick's and I'm saying, was it Dante Vaughn? He had, I think, the 1 year. Like, man, he's always had guys like that. But, it's a different dynamic now. Can you have one of those dudes and be able to control them after you guarantee you're going to make $400,000? Hell no. Hell no.
It's not exactly shocking that Mick Cronin is struggling with the adjustment of the, you know what I mean? Like, I would have probably picked his ass out in the lineup. Like, hey, who's gonna have the hardest time adjusting to NIL? Oh, it's his ass. There's no question about it. All right, let's get to toast of the night. Who gets your toast of the night, Mike? Kick us off.
I actually think it's his second of the year for me. I think it's Nick Martinelli again. I think Northwestern, you needed this one, man, and for him to deliver there at the end, and for him to be doing what he's been doing all year, which has just been special and much needed for this Northwestern team if they want to compete for an NCAA tournament berth. Nick Martinelli, like I think if you see the reflection on my jersey back there, he's on the screen. I'm just playing his interview on loop because I'm just so happy with Nick Martinelli.
Take that. Toast to Nick.
Yeah.
Jerel, what you got?
I'm right with him because that was for sure mine. I think I told you guys that before, but that's one of the kids we got a chance to coach that came through our program. Nick is a Mean Streets kid. Lucky Lefty Martinelli, man, and I'll just reiterate that point, just how crazy of a year he's been having and just a great development, man. Super proud of him. Obviously, he's having an insane year, but this is a kid who, going into Peach Jam, was committed to Elon University. Coach ended up leaving, so he decommitted, opened back up his recruitment, ended up at Northwestern, and through Peach Jam, he was a guy that was coming off the bench for us, but top 10 in scoring in the entire Peach Jam. So he's always been a guy that's been unheralded and kind of outplay where he was positioned at, and it's just great to see his evolvement and continuing to grow as a player and getting better and better, man. And they had a must-win kind of game tonight, and that was a great atmosphere. They had the fans and everybody into it, and a big win for Northwestern. So, toast to the night, Nick.
I'm gonna hand it out tonight to Dawson Garcia. Obviously hit the game winner against Michigan, but this is a young man that has been tried to find his place in the world, been to a few stops, has settled in there at Minnesota, battled some injuries, and some tough seasons, right? But I think he is as good a testament as you're going to find in college basketball in 2025 of sticking it out, right, through the good and through the bad. And I know that the team results probably aren't where he wants them to be, but obviously he's been playing his ass off, and he got the result tonight. So toast to Dawson Garcia for sticking it out and getting the dub.
Game winner.
That's going to do it for us tonight here on Field of 68 After Dark. Appreciate everybody that tuned in with us tonight here on a Thursday. Obviously, we are here throughout the week, every night in college basketball, going through the highs and the lows of the season. For Jerel McNeal, for Mike LaTulip, I'm John Martin. Thanks for hanging out with us. Have a great night here